ago now. And then for him to get caught again after that's one of the bigger issues that he had. Another issue that he had was his tiff with, Derek Jeter, who, quite frankly, is one of the greatest Yankees of all time. Probably is in the discussion for top 10 Yankees of all time. Winning 5 championships, being the golden boy, being essentially what he was Mr. New York Yankee throughout his time there. And for him to have a tiff with the guy really just made New York hate him even more. Alex Rodriguez did have one good point, but that was in his 2009 season. Again, wasn't his best season overall when it comes to what he's capable of doing. Again, pretty pedestrian numbers in compared to what he has done in his career, 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, but it was his postseason contributions that had made him what he was. Winning the MVP at that time, and going on to win his first World Series championship, which was awesome. Since that season, he's kind of 2010 was pretty good. Then 2011 starts to regress. Was suspended in 2014, and then this season just not really that good overall. 9 home runs, 31 RBIs. Again, not that great. And Friday was his last game. So that being said, he had 3 seasons in Texas, 7 years in Seattle, and then the last 12 have been in New York. So, a career spanning roughly 20 years, a little over 22 years. So, that being said, he's done a lot for the game from an offensive perspective, but, and again, players. The way I look at steroids nowadays, I don't think that they're the worst thing to happen in baseball. Honestly, when it comes, I just don't think, ever since everyone was using it, can you really tell the difference? Can you really tell who actually did it, who didn't? Maybe. I mean, if so many players were doing it at the time, you almost have to be under the assumption that almost everyone did it. So does that mean that you let A-Rod in? I don't know. I don't think he's going to get in on the first ballot. Will he get in eventually? Yeah, I think he will. I think along with Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, those guys, before they were even questioned for steroids, they were still really, really good players. Before all these questions came up for A-Rod, he was really good. Considering, you look at the stats in 98, 42 home runs, 124 RBIs. 99, 42 home runs, 111 RBIs. 2001, 2002, this is when he kind of starts using it a little bit more, but still his stats are roughly what they were, on a 162-game average. You're taking one over 22 seasons. That means he averaged about 41 home runs, 121 RBIs for his career, which is pretty amazing. You look at his batting average, about 295, close to 300 hitter, which is pretty impressive. Third base play, one of the best third base, one of the best third base players probably in the last 15, 20 years. There are other better players, of course, but he was one of them. So do you put Alex Rodriguez in the Hall of Fame? At the end of the day, not now. I think that over time, I think people are going to be okay with steroids, or at least that era, what it was. Granted, it wasn't great. It wasn't a good time for everybody. But that being said, I think for A-Rod, the stats speak for themselves, and I think he will get in eventually. Like I said, just like Barry Bonds, just like Roger Clemens, I think those guys were really great before the steroids. I just think that at some point, you're just going to have to say, look, these guys are already really good. Maybe they got maybe a little bit better, but not, I don't think enough where it was completely significant. Because people take steroids all the time. A lot of those players in the Mitchell Report, they were really a lot of nobodies. You hear players getting busted for steroids nowadays, 50 games. I think it's 50 games for the first offense, 100 games for the second offense, and then third offense is what? Banned for life? or actually banned for the season, second offense, and then banned for life the third time. A lot of these players, you don't really know who they are. A lot of them, you don't really know who they are. They take steroids and still can't get on that level. So, I don't know. That's just my point of view. So, we're going to switch from there to the Olympics. The Olympics have been absolutely fantastic. I think it's a great time for, I think it was a great time for the Olympics to come around, considering all the things that have gone around the country with politics and, with the shootings and the police officers. I think this is a perfect time for the Olympics to come around. But there's been a lot of backlash with the Olympics when it comes to how the media portrays it as sexism. And you know what? I decided to take a closer look at it because I like to listen to both sides. I'm someone that likes to listen. Hey, if this is what's really going on, then give me some evidence. That's what I want. If you give me evidence, I'll listen. But if you give me things that can be justified the other way, that they're not sexist, then what are you really saying? And what then please stop promoting your agenda that quite frankly isn't there. So, and again, before I go into this segment, this is me not saying that I do not believe sexism exists, because I do. I do. There is, women in the workplace don't make as much as men, probably not as respected in businesses as much as men, and obviously should. There's a lot of women who have paved the way for, women in 2016 who can be independent, and do their own thing without really relying on men. It's a completely different culture than it was, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And more power to them. So before I go into this argument, I just wanted to know where my stance is on that. Just to be perfectly clear. So that being said, let's go into this a little bit deeply here. And I found this article that was pretty interesting. CNN had written an article about is the Olympic coverage undercutting women's achievements. And quite frankly, I just don't think it's completely true. No, I don't. There were two instances that really, and for me, as someone who wants to break into this, I'm trying to understand it from a journalistic perspective, why they pronounced it or why they portrayed it in such an angle that they did. Because because I'm trying to learn from professionals who have been doing this for a long time. So that way, if they make a mistake or, they make error in judgment, I'm aware of that. So that way, if I ever make it to there, I don't make that same mistake. So one of the biggest one that I think has been going on, and I think has been trolling a lot of people, is the article from the Chicago Tribune. If I'm going to pull up this article here, just give it a second. Just because I think that this is one that really irks me a little bit. Okay. So just give me a second. It's still loading. Okay. So, Olympian Corey Cogro-Unrein, she's won the bronze medal in women's trap shooting at the Rio Olympics. That's awesome. And again, more power to her. That's a great accomplishment. It's her third Olympics. That's awesome. That's great. It's definitely nothing take away from that. Oh, give me a second here. So, the Chicago Tribune understands that she is married to a player from the team. So, the way that they phrased it for that particular headline was, wife of Chicago Bears lineman and won a bronze at the gold medal. Now, of course, people were outraged. Why didn't you bring up, three-time Olympian so-and-so won the gold medal? Blah, blah, blah. She's a three-time, she's been in the Olympics multiple times. Why don't you give her the credit that it deserves? And I read the article. it does bring her name up in the article. You know, it's not like it's a national news story. If it was a national news story and that was done, yeah, I get it. That's not right. It should say 3-time Olympian Corey, this person, this person, 3-time Olympian, reference her by her first name, not wife of. But it's from a Chicago newspaper. How do you think people are going to are going to respond to that? Hey, she's someone local. She's someone who, who's married to someone that plays in Chicago. That's why Chicago reported it that way. Like I said, I would get it if, let's say that, for example, Damian Lillard, for example, was married to an Olympian, and then she won gold. Probably the way, if I were going to write it, and this is my perspective, if I were going to write it, wife of NBA star gets gold in judo, and be like, "Oh, this is awesome! Like who's the star, and then who's married to?" Because it's interesting, and it's because it's local. At the end of the day, if it's not national, okay, it's not. It's not national. So that's how local newspapers try to stay in business, because they try to make the headline interesting enough for you to read. And clearly it got the attention of a lot of people that thought that was a sexist comment. And let's be honest, it's not. It's just a newspaper trying to make a headline that's great for their community. That's it. That's it. They're trying to make the city of Chicago proud. Hey, this is awesome. This someone local here got gold in the Olympics or got bronze in the Olympics. Let me click on that and how they're related to someone from the Chicago Bears. That's it. That's really it. It's not a sexism agenda, okay? It isn't. The other article was the swimmer who had, again, finished, I believe won or finished second in the Olympics in her meet. But the NBC commentators gave credit to her husband and coach as well. Is that a bad thing? No, I don't think it is. When Michael Phelps was getting coverage, by the way, for winning, where did the camera angles focus on after he had won his meets? His mom and his fiance and their newborn child. Is that sexism? No, I don't think so. I think, because they were talking, if you listen to, of course, Michael Phelps, one of the greatest Olympians, he went through a lot of struggle, but now he's finally getting his life together. And a lot of it has to do with being married to such a great woman and, having to, go through these trials and tribulations with her. And so that's why a lot of the credit can go to her, because, they had to go through a lot of stuff together. Is that sexism? No, I don't think it is. So I think that, and if reading this article, by the way, you can read it on louderwithcrowder.com. It's titled CNN, not everything at the Olympics is sexist, because it isn't. An NBC official had the machismo, by the way, this is part of the article, an NBC official had the machismo to insinuate men and women are different. What a dingleberry. The people who watch the Olympics are not particularly sports fans, he had said. More women watch the games than men. And for the women, they're less interested in the result and more interested in the journey. It's sort of like an ultimate reality show and a miniseries wrapped into one. And to tell the truth, it has been the complaint of a few sports writers. It has not been the complaint of the vast viewing public. And it goes on to say, your panties got into twist over this advice. Where depends. This guy is saying men and women are different. Are saying men and women like different things. I'm failing to understand how this is sexism. Because men and women like different things. See also any store with a men's department separated from a women's department. Oh, wait, that isn't it? A men dared A man dared to say that men and women like different things, which implies men and women are different. And in that case, the Olympics must be better packaged for women who generally don't like sports, because more women are watching the Olympics than men.